Joining us on the stream, we're starting the presentation again so that you can see the full presentation. So this is an outline application with all matters reserved except access for land at Nova Scotia Farm, west of Jack Chase Way, West Caister. The outline planning application with all matters reserved except access will provide up to 665 dwellings, a local centre with scope for convenient shops, services and community uses, including a health centre, land for a primary school, associated infrastructure and open space. The site area is 33.6 hectares. Reserved matters for future planning applications will include appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. As a major development above 5 hectares and 50 dwellings, the application was supported by an environmental impact assessment prepared by competent experts recognised as such by the local planning authority. The EIA comprehensively covers topics of agriculture, air quality, archaeology, cultural heritage, ecology, flood risk, drainage and water resources, noise, socio-economic impacts, transport, landscape and visual, and cumulative and combination effects. The application was also supported by a planning statement, a design and access statement, an environmental statement, a flood risk assessment, heritage impact assessment, arboricultural impact assessment, landscape master plan and strategy, and a development framework, setting out principles of land use access, density, building heights, green infrastructure, and circulation. This slide shows the site. So it's an aerial photo of the site, edged red. Say 33 hectares with Caister to the east, the solar farm to the west, the A149 dual down to the south, Jack Chase Way, running up here. In terms of location in parishes, the open space area, the proposed open space area lies in the Ormsby, St Margaret and Scrapby parish. The bulk of the site lies in the West Caister parish, with the boundary of parishes running down the centre of Jack Chase Way, with Caister-on-Sea to the east. In terms of Borough Council wards, you've got Ormsby ward to the north, Caister North ward to the east, and wrapped around by Caister South ward. This slide is a broad brush of the layout, and for the purposes of description, the right-hand side of the slide is the northern end of the site towards Ormsby and Hemsby, and the left-hand side is down towards the roundabout, the A149 roundabout with A149 here, Jack Chase Way running here. So this slide shows an open space area will be located within the development of around 10. In total, there's 10 hectares of open space. This would include a dogs off lead area. This area feature here is a water detention feature. The orange lines represent a circular path and dogs off walking area. You can see the site is broken up into development pods, if you like. This is the central boulevard, which would run from a northern access with a roundabout at the northern end, down to a new intersection with Prince of Wales Road, which would be a traffic-controlled intersection. Then you would also have a toucan, which is a pedestrian bicycle crossing located here, coming across to Diana Way, the open space at Diana Way, and another one down towards the southern end of the site. And what you see here is in this area is the local centre, which, as I say, would include the health centre and shops. And this parcel here is the 2 hectare area for a primary school with playing fields and facilities. This feature here, again, is a stormwater detention area. Again, a stormwater detention area. And this area is the location of the World War II gun battery, which I'll come to later in the presentation. So looking at the site, focusing in a little bit more, this is the northern end, and again, so I've oriented it north-south. So this is the open space in a bit more detail with the detention pond, the northern access, and the slide on your right is a photograph of the picture on your right is a picture of the northern end of the site, which is currently agricultural field. This is the end of the east-west hedge, which runs here. And again, here's the east-west hedge, so another shot of that. So moving through the site towards more the body of the site, you've got Nova Scotia Farm located here on the west side. This is, again, an open space with detention area. The black area is a grid of cells that would be used to detain water. And again, this is just showing how the site would be broken up with the central boulevard and development parcels coming off. So this is a photograph looking south from that point. This photograph here is of the gun battery, which is overgrown, as you can see, World War II gun battery, which is to be retained as a feature of the development with open space around it. Here's the east-west hedge again. So again, moving through the site, this is the school site, primary school site, with sports field and the local centre. And here is the boulevard again coming through. Here's the intersection with Prince of Wales Road, which would be a traffic light controlled intersection. Here you've got a toucan, an on-demand bicycle pedestrian crossing. Again, some photographs of the site in relation to that, including, of note, this is the existing established shelter belt that forms the western boundary of the site, which is identified by this big green swath through here, which is approximately 8 to 10 metres. And it should be noted that in the proposal there is a new perimeter path which will run round the outside of this existing belt, and then a new hedge will be planted to form a green corridor along that area. So again, moving south through the site, here's photographs looking at the southern end, looking east. Again, that's the western boundary hedge. And we've got the southern end of the site with Jack Chase Way here, the roundabout down here, Prince of Wales Road here, and there would be another crossing, toucan crossing here. Right, so hopefully that's oriented you with regards to the layout and the site. The picture here is the existing bike ped facility on Diana Way on the east side of Jack Chase Way, which will connect across Jack Chase Way. There'll be a crossing come across Jack Chase Way to connect to this and provide bicycle and pedestrian connectivity through into the village. And this slide at the bottom is the roundabout at Jack Chase Way, A149 and Norwich Road. Right. Moving on, this slide is an indicative layout of the local centre, just to give you an idea of how that could be, and it demonstrates that there is capable of providing a local shopping area, a public service type building, possibly something like a nursery, daycare nursery, a medical centre, and a care home. And those are indicative at this stage. Again, this is showing it in relation to the boulevard coming through and the intersection of Prince of Wales Road. Right, we're nearly done with the orientation. This slide is an indicative phasing plan for the development to show how it would be developed over time. So it's anticipated phasing, and a condition is recommended in the report with regards to phasing, which would also be a provision of the Section 106 agreement relating to triggers for delivery of certain bits of community infrastructure during the development. So what you're seeing here in purple is phase 1 of the development. towards the southern end, which would be approximately 275 dwellings, the provision of the signalised intersection on Prince of Wales Road with Prince of Wales Road, a southern crossing point referred to earlier, and decision at this point would be as to where the type of primary school that would be delivered as part of the local centre. Then we move on to the blue area, which is phase 2. So phase 2 would be 90 dwellings, at which point the roundabout at the northern intersection would be coming in. Also the northern basin and public open space, detention basin, public open space, and associated infrastructure. Then we get on to the green area, which is phase 3, which includes the local centre and school, and 215 dwellings with associated infrastructure. And then finally, phase 4 is the amber orange area. Again, infrastructure and as I say, the conditions are that a submittal of reserve matters would require delivery of certain aspects of the development and within provision of the section of 106 agreement, timing coinciding with this phasing plan. So, in terms of assessment of the application, the starting point for consideration is that this is an allocated strategic housing site in the adopted local development plan. It's allocated due to its sustainable location with access to infrastructure, services and amenities. The principle of development has been accepted and therefore requires to be assessed in the context of relevant legislation as set out in the report, the adopted plan, its policies and other material considerations. And within this context, responses from statutory consultees and representations from the public have been assessed within the report. So in addition to assessment of the proposal in general terms of the adopted core strategy, the application has been assessed against the 24 criteria in policy CA1, land west of Jack Chase Way, for the strategic housing allocation. The focus of this presentation is on the matters raised in public representations, and we would point out at this point that the site is considered to broadly comply with both the strategic policies and the broad policies of the development plan. So turning to public concerns, these could be grouped as shown on this slide with regards to highways infrastructure, natural environment, specifically hedgerows, facilities and utilities, and the following slides will dig into this a bit more. So in terms of highway considerations, the National Planning Policy Framework in terms of highways considerations are that development should only be prevented or refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on road network would be severe. And in this context, applications give first priority to pedestrian and cycle movements, both within the scheme and connecting neighbouring areas. And secondly, as far as possible, to facilitate access to high-quality public transport with layouts that maximise the catchment area for bus or other public transport services and appropriate facilities. In this case, it is again considered that the proposed strategy complies with the approach set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. So I'll just run through the access strategy in a bit more detail. The following slides set out the key elements of the access strategy to mitigate impacts. Highways drawings and proposed access off-site works are all appended in the report, and the development proposes the following. 2 principal points of access from Jack Chase Way, the southern access with Prince of Wales Road, having a signalised intersection with bike and ped improvements, bike and ped elements. The northern access, a 3-arm roundabout with pedestrian crossing, 790 metres north of Prince of Wales Road. A reduction in the speed limit on Jack Chase Way from 60 to 40 miles an hour, secured by a traffic regulation order. A new cycleway along Jack Chase Way from the A149 junction. Toucan, which is a bike ped crossing between the existing cycleway located on the east side of Jack Chase Way and the proposed cycleway on the west side of Jack Chase Way. New zebra crossing at Norwich Road for travel to the site for existing residents in Caister. During phase 1 of the development, existing public transport facilities on Prince of Wales Road would be used. A new Caister to Norwich bus service would be provided on first occupation, serving existing residents and new residents along Norwich and Yarmouth Road. And as development progresses, the internal spine road will be completed and then served by an improved bus service. New bus stops may allow for the diversion of the service 1A, currently using Jack Chase Way, to serve the site. And this will link the site with Great Yarmouth and providing commuter and leisure service. Also, there will be upgrading of existing footways on footway cycleway along Norwich Road from Prince of Wales Road, speed management measures implemented along Ormsby Road that include pedestrian crossing points, cycle stands to be provided in the centre of the village to encourage cycling to the centre. So in terms of public concerns with regards to highways infrastructure, sorry, getting ahead of myself. The main concern from the public is with regards to reducing the function of Jack Chase Way, causing traffic to divert through Caister. And the proposed mitigation, as outlined, includes the improvement of the roundabout at the A149 with Jack Chase Way, traffic calming on Ormsby Road, vehicle flow sensitive traffic signals at the junction of Jack Chase Way and Prince of Wales Road. Traffic modelling assessment that's been undertaken identifies that vehicle travel on the neutral weekday and summer holiday period along Jack Chase Way will be 20% quicker than through Caister. Another concern from the public was with regard to that the site would be regarded as too far to existing schools. In respect of this, it's considered that the proposed bicycle and pedestrian crossings, improved bike ped facilities off-site will help to facilitate non-vehicle travel. The new primary school will be on site and will be close to the existing residents in the existing primary school, so it could help to reduce vehicle trips. In terms of public concerns with regard to the natural environment, these focus on the removal of the hedgerow on Jack Chase Way, loss of habitat, surface water flooding, and loss of Grade 1 agricultural land. In respect of this, the loss of hedgerow, I'll focus on a little more shortly. The EIA identifies that there would be neutral impacts on plants and reptiles, with opportunities for species enhancement. Regarding surface water flooding, the flood risk assessment sets out the principles for a drainage strategy as required using a sustainable drainage hierarchy, taking account of existing topography. Now, looking at the hedgerow issue, this slide shows is a hedgerow plan, and what you can see here is with Jack Chase Way again at the bottom of the site, and the areas coloured green are for retention. The areas coloured blue are for removal to facilitate the access. It should be noted that this is the existing tree belt, which is to be retained, the existing east-west hedge to be retained except for a break where the boulevard will come through, and the existing east-west hedge at the northern end of the site to be retained. The area, the areas coloured pink running around the site, including the northern end of the open space, is new planting. So all told, as set out in the report, the length to be removed is 870 metres in total. The length to be planted is 1,500 plus metres to be planted. The next slide just helps a little bit with regards to the aerial photo. So in amber, these are the areas of hedge coming out. In green, this is hedgerow to be going in. The next slide just is as an indicative landscape master plan for the site, an indicative which again shows the existing shelter belt, new planting along the boulevard, planting along the boundaries and in the open space, and to the front of the site. So in conclusion, with regards to impacts on the natural environment, in this case, the adverse impacts that have been identified are considered to be outweighed by the sustainability benefits of the location of this development at the edge of Caister. In terms of impacts on facilities and utilities, including foul sewers, schools, and primary health care, the impacts on community structure resulting directly from the development have been assessed by statutory consultees and are proposed to be mitigated with the provision of financial contributions, including schools, land for a primary school, two-form entry school. Land is also safeguarded for a local centre, including a healthcare facility. Should the NHS and local healthcare provider elect to provide a GP surgery, it can be located there. Foul sewers, in terms of foul sewers, Anglian Water have confirmed that there is capacity at the Water Recycling Centre and has agreed a point of connection. A condition is recommended requiring the agreement of a foul drainage strategy. Initial plans indicate there would be the provision of at least 2 on-site pumping stations and emergency storage. The planning obligations that come with this proposed development are set out on this slide and the following slide. I won't go through them at length. They're set out in the report. But they include 20% affordable housing provision, the local centre, a travel plan and bus service to Norwich, retention of hedgerows, green infrastructure works of £150 per dwelling, open space provision of 10.57 hectares, including long-term management, SUDS provision and long-term management, and contributions towards schools provision and healthcare provision. So, turning to concluding assessment and the planning balance in this case, the conclusion in this presentation is, and the committee report sets out, that includes a comprehensive assessment of the proposal. Consideration has included the impacts identified in the environmental impact assessment, habitats regulations assessment, the proposed mitigations and recommendations therein, which have been carried forward into proposed conditions and provisions in the Section 106 agreement. Regarding the planning balance, in this case, Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 requires the local planning authority to make its determination in accordance with the development plan. The application is assessed to broadly in accordance with the development plan and in particular policy CA1. Potential negatives can be mitigated with appropriate planning conditions and planning obligations where necessary. The proposal is in a sustainable location close to a range of services and public transport and can deliver 665 houses towards the core strategy housing target. Traffic impacts can be mitigated. The EIA demonstrates that while acknowledging the loss of Grade 2 agricultural land, there would be no major adverse impacts on existing natural environment, and it is considered that there are overriding sustainability benefits of allowing development in this location. The environmental impact assessment also concludes that impacts on landscape and the setting of heritage assets can be safeguarded and mitigated. This complies with policy CS10 of the core strategy and E5 of local plan policy 2, local plan part 2. There will be an adverse impact on the removal of the hedgerow, 870 metres along Jack Chase Way, which will be mitigated with hedgerow replacement 1,548 elsewhere on the site. The hedgerow is less than 40 years old. Its removal is required to provide access with forward visibility displays and will allow the new neighbourhood, local centre and school to integrate physically and visually, connecting with the adjoining part of the village. The EIA identifies measures to mitigate any significant adverse impacts from the proposed development. These can be addressed with recommended conditions and through the commitment of the applicant to provide significant community infrastructure. So the recommendation is as set out on the slide, and as an addendum to the recommendation, given the type and amount of provisions to be included in the Section 106 agreement, we are recommending that a 3-month or longer period, if deemed required by the Head of Planning, is agreed to complete the Section 106 agreement. Also, that provisions are included in the Section 106 agreement for a travel plan, Norwich bus service and retention of hedgerows prior to development, accepting those to be removed to form access to the site. The recommendation is as set out. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, that was rather long.
Thank you, Gordon, for your comprehensive report. Have we got any technical questions from councillors, please? Press your button, Ron, please. Councillor Henton.
Thank you, Chairman. 665 houses will invariably mean at least that increase of vehicles used in Jack Chase Way and probably more. As mentioned, the highway considerations are set out in the assessment of the report, but what investigation, if any, has there been about the existing usage of the road with the winter and summer variations, and what, if any, will the increased usage of the road have on the effect of movement of vehicles along the road? In short, is it likely to cause traffic congestion and possibly rat running through Caister Village? Thank you.
Chair, I did seek to address some of that in the body of the report and in my presentation. I'm pleased to say we have a member from Norfolk County Council Highways with us who can perhaps help us with any technical type questions. But I recall pointing out that in terms of the modelling, during the neutral weekday and summer holiday, that Jack Chase Way would be 20% faster than going through Caister itself, based upon the improvements to the A149 roundabout, the traffic calming on Ormsby Road, and other measures. So I'll turn to Mr. Wilson if that helps.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, the Highway Authority considers
Just speak a bit closer to the mic, please.
Sorry. Apologies. Is that better?
Yep, that's fine.
The Highway Authority has reviewed the submitted documents and considers the transport assessment to be quite robust, in line with current standards and expectations. We consider that the package of proposed highway measures We consider the proposed package of highway measures to provide sufficient mitigation to ensure the impact of the development is unlikely to be severe. The journey time assessment that was referred to. Apologies.
Turning this into a whitewash. We need to hear what's being said.
Okay, thank you. I run the meeting.
Thank you.
I run the meeting, not you, thank you. I'll give everyone a fair chance. I am taking notice. If you could start again and speak up, please.
Sorry. The Highway Authority considers that the transport assessment is robust, along with the package of proposed highway measures. It seems unlikely that the impact of the development would be severe. As Gordon pointed out in his presentation, there was an assessment of journey times and the likelihood of traffic diverting from Jack Chase Way through the existing community. That assessment suggested that the journey time, along with the package of measures, would be approximately 1 minute quicker on Jack Chase Way. And on top of that, the Ormsby traffic calming measures that are included in the package weren't considered in that assessment. So the outcome is likely to be more robust.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Henderson? Yeah. Okay, I now call on Councillor Paul Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. CS2 of our newly adopted local plan clearly states that 5% of new developments are to come from secondary and tertiary villages. West Caister and Ormsby are listed as tertiary and secondary villages. By my calculation, that means that we only need about 110 new houses on this site to comply with our newly adopted local plan, not 665. And I can't see how we've suddenly got so many more. Can you explain that, please, Gordon?
I think, Councillor,
That's it for now.
it comes down to the fact that this is an allocated site which is being deemed in the local plan part 2 to be the most sustainable location for delivering the housing growth required by the core strategy. And so you take this site as a sustainable urban extension, and then you look for other developments in your tertiary and secondary villages. So this lot is the best place for a chunk of housing to be sustainable, and then the tertiary and the secondary villages pick up the rest, what we might call windfall or smaller housing allowances after that.
I'm sorry.
I think that's the
I'm
easiest
sorry,
way to
but
explain it.
This is not sustainable. You can't walk from the shop to there. We've got to do stuff and put shops there to make it sustainable. And there's no guarantee we will get shops.
Councillor
or
Hammond,
there.
technical questions, not
Well,
statements.
it is a technical
Thank
question.
you.
It's a technical question.
You've
because
asked the question
our
and you've had
policy-
the answer.
I don't
Okay.
feel it's a correct answer.
Okay. Okay. You all right?
Well, the principle of development is in line with the adopted local development plan, which is that this is your biggest allocation for housing growth in the borough until 2030. And so this is the most sustainable location, and it's got its local centre and its facilities to make it a sustainable community in a sustainable location.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, just for clarification. At one point on the plan, it states the primary school would have 2 hectares of land, and on one of the plans, it states 1.2 plus includes the playing fields. Can we confirm that it is 2 hectares for the playing fields and the school?
That's correct.
Yeah, so the plan's incorrect. One of the
No,
plan.
what it's showing is that I think it's 1.2 for the for the primary school building and 0.8
Yeah.
for the playing
It
field.
says including on one of the plans.
Yes, so it's total 2.
Yeah, thank you. The second thing is on paragraph 2.7a, and 2.7b, when it talks about having sheltered housing, has confirmed they would accept. Is that an acceptance of all the conditions as laid out on 2.7b?
Sorry, which page is that, Councillor?
Page 11.
Page 11. And the question is,
I'm just clarifying exactly what is meant by 2.7b regarding the sheltered housing. Are they accepting it and it will be part of the recommendations?
Gordon's reports demonstrate that the local centre that's proposed is 1.75 hectares, up to 1.7 hectares, 75 hectares as required by the allocation policy, within which a sheltered housing facility or a care home could be provided on a site of 0.33
So that'll be part of it,
hectares.
yeah.
And the applicant has confirmed that that is acceptable to them.
And thirdly, if I may, the spine route going through the centre, what size is the route?
I don't think it's been designed yet, but it'll be to highways requirements in terms of its
It'll be a
specification.
normal highway specification.
It'll
Because
be-
it's the main route through the estate.
Well, at this point, that will be subject to reserved matters and detailed highway scrutiny in going forward. It's indicative at this point, but yes, it will be to required
I was
standards.
just concerned because obviously it's going to be the main route through, perhaps for buses and things of that nature.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll stand. I can't help being short, and I'd like people to be able to hear. I've lived in the area for 54 years, and I've lived here before Jack Chaseway and the Caister bypass was built. When
Is
I got
this-
married in 1973...
Councillor Freeman, is this a technical
It's
question?
a technical question, yeah, which I need to pass to Gordon, but also
Right.
to the officer. As I said, in 1973, you would allow 2 hours to get from Winterton through to Yarmouth when I went home from work. So the question I've got is, we've seen a lot about modelling and changes. I drive down Jack Chase Way every day. To me, it's a very simple solution, is that the traffic is completely snarled up because everything is coming in on the right-hand side. And I think the highway code tells us that the traffic, you give way to the traffic on the right. So my question is, has this been explored that we had traffic lights on the bottom roundabout, because it's a constant flow of traffic from the A149 and the traffic coming through on the Norwich Road from Filby? And the second part of the question is that we're talking a lot about traffic calming on Ormsby Road, which I presume is the road going in from the top roundabout into Caister. Why aren't we looking at any of the traffic calming going from the top roundabout at the first and last going into Ormsby? Because you're just turning it into 2 mighty great rat runs. Because people who know the area think, well, I'm not going to sit in queue on Jack Chase Way. So what I'd like to know is what investigations have actually been done on the roundabout at the bottom so that people can get out, because that is the problem. You can't get out because everybody's coming on the right. And secondly, what has been built into the 106 agreements to provide some traffic revision orders for the people of Scratby? For Scratby and Ormsby. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I will turn to the Highways Authority for most of that, but I can confirm that the traffic regulation orders with regards to Jack Chase Way and traffic calming is on Ormsby Road. There's no proposed traffic calming out with.
Thank you. I can perhaps shed some light on the southern roundabout, A149, Norwich Road, Jack Chase Way. Generally, a roundabout of that size wouldn't respond very well to being signalised, simply because there isn't enough storage space in the circulatory to accommodate any queues. So the roundabout would be likely to lock up and not improve matters. What I can offer, though, is the highway mitigation package does include improvements to the roundabout approaches from both Jack Chase Way and Norwich Road to increase capacity there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donna Hammond.
Thank you, Chair. Where I live, I have to come to the southern roundabout to go to Caister, Yarmouth, or the northern villages. So I obviously look, and as you look down Jack Chase Way, there's always a queue wanting to join that roundabout. Quite often the queue's as far back you can't even see the end.
Is this a technical question, Councillor Hammond?
Okay, sorry, I'll get to it. When there's an accident on Jack Chase Way, they shut both roundabouts to sort out the accident. When you were doing your road surveys, did you at any time shut down that road to see the chaos that is everywhere else right now, never mind getting another 600 or 1,000 cars or whatever you're going to have extra? Thank you.
Well, thank you. The Highway Authority wouldn't have carried out the assessment. We reviewed the documents as submitted. Generally, in these instances, the operation of the highway is considered under typical circumstances, and it wouldn't include an appraisal of closing the road.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
Chair, if I could just pick up on the officer's comment. You talk about a package of measures on 106 on the Ormsby Road. This is not a small scheme. I know it's in the local plan and it's been there for a long time. But this is not a small scheme. Why is it not possible to provide funding for traffic revision orders on Yarmouth Road into Ormsby? I've applied to Norfolk County Council and they've said, oh yes, you can have a TRO if you pay for it yourself. I don't see it's the need of the residents to have to do that, sir.
I'm sorry, I can't answer why Ormsby wasn't included in the appraisal. The Highway Authority assessed the documents as submitted and considered they offered an appropriate level of mitigation.
Okay, thank you. Any other technical questions? Councillor Hammond.
Yes, thank you, Chair. To the highways officer, you state that changing the speed limit and then putting traffic calming in on the Ormsby Road will only add a minute to journey time, but you're going to reduce the journey time by reducing the speed from 60 to 40 by 30% on Jack Chase Way without whatever time is put in for all the roundabouts and the crossings. I mean, at the moment, you've got 6 pedestrian crossings on that road, where there's only 3 on Caister High Street, Yarmouth Road. I didn't count how many was on Ormsby Road, but I think there's only 1 going along Ormsby Road. Two. I stand corrected, 2. I don't go up that end very often. So you're putting more pedestrian crossings on a bypass than is going all the way through the village. And then you're saying the journey time's only going to be a minute quicker using the bypass. Once we get another 1,200 cars coming out onto Jack Chase Way, the village of Caister is going to be screaming for a new bypass because it's just going to start up again. I was born in Caister. I know how bad the traffic was before we had the bypass and there was less houses. It's going to be even worse.
Councillor Hammond, questions, not statements.
Well, the question is, how long is the journey time then? You're saying it's a minute quicker, but what do you say the journey time is now going to be? It's easy to say it's a minute, but is it going to be 35 minutes instead of 34 minutes? Is it going to be an hour and 20 minutes instead of an hour and 21 minutes? You know, I would like to get quantified, please.
Chair, I think, cover in the report that the assessment is it's still going to be 20% quicker on the neutral weekday and holiday time to be going along Jack Chase Way. 20% of whatever.
Okay. Any other technical questions from councillors, please? No? Okay, thank you. So I now call upon, well, there's 2 agents. First of all, Darren Cogman and Mrs. Debbie Sherman. You've got 2.5 minutes each, a total of 5. Whoever goes first doesn't really matter. Mr. Cogman, thank you. Could you just press your mic when you're ready, please? Yep.
Good evening, Chair. Members of the Planning Committee. I'm Darren Cogman, Planning Associate at Bidwell, supporting this outline planning application as agent. Debbie Sherman, Head of Planning at Persimmon Homes, and Ray Long of Richard Jackson Engineering Consultants are also present to assist and provide answers where required. Your officer has provided a comprehensive synopsis of this planning application and the issues for you to consider here today. Accordingly, I'd like to fully support your officer's comprehensive committee report, including its conclusions. The application before you is an allocated site within your local plan, having been adopted in December 2021. As such, the site has already been through significant consultation and a comprehensive assessment process, including full scrutiny by a local plan inspector. The principle of the mixed-use development sought and the quantum for the residential development is therefore already fully established. The application is supported by a suite of documents, including a robust environmental impact assessment, and we have worked collaboratively with your officers and other stakeholders to develop the application since submission. To reflect this position, you will note that there are no outstanding concerns from either statutory or internal council consultees. These include County Highways, Anglian Water and the Borough Council's tree officer. Your officer's committee report helpfully provides an assessment of this application against the site-specific criteria of the policy at para 9.41 of the report. Evidently, this demonstrates that all the policy criteria are met and that mitigation can be provided via appropriate planning conditions and obligations where necessary. As a comprehensive development in a sustainable location, this scheme will create a new neighbourhood including provision for a primary school, health centre and local centre, as well as much needed homes to include policy compliant affordable housing of 20%. Accordingly, this site will make a meaningful contribution to the housing needs of the council, including the affordable housing need. In essence, over a period of several years, this site has been promoted by the local plan process that's culminated in the site's adoption. This outline plan application reflects the next stage in the process of the delivery of housing, a school and other uses, and I trust that you'll be able to support the scheme today. I'll now hand over to Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, members. Persimmon are committed to bringing forward a scheme that will represent and provide various benefits both to the borough and the people of Caister. You've seen a detailed officer's report this evening that's gone through the highways issues, gone through matters relating to the hedgerow lost and so on and so forth. But we are aware of those highway infrastructure concerns, and we have worked closely with the Highway Authority to ensure that the scheme that sits before you this evening is the safest and most robust option in highway terms. In terms of the loss of the hedgerow, that is indeed regrettable as reflected in the report, but it is necessary to provide adequate visibility displays for the accesses onto Jack Chase Way. We're aware that there wasn't an option to provide access onto the A149 from this site, and hence the scheme was designed very much to take account of that and provide the safest option. Just touching on the environmental benefits, as well as the extensive hedgerow replanting, an additional hedgerow that would come forward as part of this scheme at an additional 678 metres, I believe. We're also providing further additional environmental benefits. You saw on the presentation that there was this extensive area on the northern section of the site that provides 10.5 hectares of open space. In actual fact, that's over 3.67 hectares more than your local plan requires. So we are sensitive to the quality of the development that needs to come forward on this site. In terms of the local centre, you've seen the option plan that's come forward. We are committed to enabling that land to come forward, to marketing it and putting it out there to the market for relevant commercial operators. We agree to setting land aside for the care home, and would commence that marketing strategy as soon as we receive planning permission. Finally, we want to reassure members that this development will be built using our new house type range that is both NDSS and M42 compliant. Our schemes that will be presented to you will show an enhanced level of development, taking into account our own sustainability and placemaking standards that we're in the process of publishing, because we want to deliver a quality development on this site. And we hope that you can agree and grant planning permission this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherman. If you'd just like to stay there, has any councillors got any questions? Councillor Myers. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do have one question with regards to the development and the the provision of affordable housing. On a previous development, some of the reason put forward for affordable housing was a reduced size housing below the national standard framework house sizes. And the reason that was put forward was it's to make it more affordable for people. There's 133 properties that put forward with this as affordable housing. What assurances can Persimmon give us on that those 133 houses, to meet the affordable housing criteria of what they're setting, will not be below the standard sizes of an ordinary house?
Thank you, Chairman. We can give that assurance. As I said, we have a new house type range which makes sure that both private and affordable units meet the national space standards and are M42 compliant. We took on board what we heard from members when our scheme at Bradwell was before you recently, and that's why I wanted to give you that reassurance.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherman. Any other technical questions? If I may just ask one question. What measures would Persimmon Homes put in place to mitigate measures with dust going into neighbouring properties? That's been a major problem in Bradwell South, the site you've developed, and I just wondered what you would put in place to maybe not see those problems happen on this site if that was given permission this evening.
Clearly, we will learn our lessons from the Bradwell site. In terms of conditions to ensure that it is under the control of the local planning authority, you will see on your list of conditions a construction method statement and construction management plan. So we will put forward those measures in that construction management plan. But it's usually dust suppression, is spraying and wheel washing, and ensuring that there are measures to prevent, transference of dust.
As long as you do it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Sorry? Councillor Williams, I'm sorry.
Yes, if I may ask, your new designs and the standards, does it include an electric charging point for each of the houses? And secondly, have you looked at alternative means of heating the houses? rather than by the usual fossil fuels?
So in terms of the electric charging points, we've accepted, as we did on the Bradwell scheme, that those charging points need to be included with our development. So yes, they would come forward as part of this scheme with our reserve matters applications. And in terms of alternative heat source, yes, if the building regulations change in 2025, so at that point there will be a requirement to do it anyway, and clearly we will adhere to what the building regulations state in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you, Mrs. Sherman, for your time and input. Thank you. I now call on Miss Linda Rumble and Mr. R. Coe. I believe you're doing, are you doing it separately or separately, yeah? Yeah, so the same again? Yes, Chair. Yeah, okay, so same again, 2.5 minutes, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. My comments are really to do with the environmental issues as I see them. Homes are important and are needed, which I agree. But I feel that the bypass being downgraded is a step backwards with all the various road and pedestrian accesses that are going to be made along it. I don't understand why this has to happen when the landowner does have already access to the 149 and the road coming off from the 1064 along the top of Norwich Road. So would it not be just as well to use one of those for the main access on and off of the new site, and just use a set of pedestrian lights at each end of the bypass, giving access to Ormsby Road and Norwich Road? Also, I'm under the impression that mixed hedgerows have been protected as long as they've been there for more than 30 years and are longer than 20 metres long. But in this scheme, a lot of it is being removed. I've heard them say that they're replacing it with other bits around the site and so on. But this is going to be very detrimental to the houses on the opposite side of the bypass. Those houses will then get far more noise, CO2 pollution, because of the removal of the mature hedges and trees, and also extra CO2 and pollution from the traffic that's going to be slowed down, stopped at traffic lights, etc., etc. That seems to be, again, a step backwards. And it's fine for Persimmon to say that they're allowing space for a school, doctor's surgery and other facilities, but they're not actually building them. So unless somebody else wants to actually take that up and build them on that site, they're not going to happen. They may never come to fruition. And then that means that people from that new site will be using the other facilities that are already in place.
10 seconds left. Thank you.
Yeah, so basically the bottom of Norwich Road is actually tied up when school starts and when school finishes. This is only going to be even worse.
Okay, thank you. If you'd just like to stay there, any questions? Is there any questions from any members? No? Okay, thanks, Ms. Rumble. And we have now Mr. Coe, please. Thank you. Same again, Mr. Coe, 2.5.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's approximately 1.5 kilometres from the centre of that development to the school area. The children and the parents will have to walk that run twice a day. That's 6 kilometres, wind and rain and snow. We talk about using other routing. Deviating from the 6-mile walk to go via Diana Way Park, navigating the en-route and off-road parking along Prince of Wales Road, the buses that travel along there and the 10 road crossings along there will just add extra time. We do not believe those ways are going to be used very much. We believe that the crossing for most people will be them walking down through the development to the bottom southern crossing. They will not go onto the side of that bypass, walking and smelling the fumes and having traffic roaring past them. The 187 children and some 100 parents who endeavour to cross that road down the bottom of the A149 and the Norwich Road crossing up to 4 times a day at peak times in the morning and between 2:30 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon will be facing lots and lots of traffic down there. As far as I'm aware, there's been no modelling at all for any identification as to where those issues are in the plan. And should the footbridge not be built, there is the real possibility of a reactive response for a footbridge if near misses and accidents become apparent and local demands are made for safer travel. However, we believe there is a possible solution. Nova Scotia site rises some 21 metres above mean sea level, which means that there should be no danger of flooding. We wish to have an underpass on the southernmost crossing along Jack Chase Way built. It should be safer, it should be low maintenance, it should be less expensive, and it will be a positive incentive for parents to walk to school.
Thank you, Mr. Coe. Any questions from councillors, please? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Coe, for your time and your input. Thank you. I now invite Councillor Wood from the Parish Council to come forward, please.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes, Mr. Wood. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll push this one.
No, that's already on for you. Thank you.
Right. Our village identity is unique. We are passionate and proud of our village, and we are passionate and proud, and we want to do the right thing. By allowing this development in its current form, it will have an adverse effect on highway safety. Children travelling to and from school is a real concern for safety. The bypass, despite crossings, will remain a barrier. This is a fast road, and even with a reduction in the speed limit, it will remain as a real safety hazard. In the past 12 years, 3 children have lost their lives in traffic accidents on the northern roads of our parish. That's 3 too many. We recommended bridge crossings of the bypass in our only meeting with the developer. The effects of the bypass becoming slower and more congested, which will is apparent from tonight, will lead to traffic entering Caister from the northern villages by the only other route, straight along Ormsby Road through the middle of Caister and past the entrance to our schools, already congested area, twice a day. We already have concerns about safety and speeding on the key village roads. This will only be compounded by any delays along our bypass. We currently have 30% of cars that use Norwich Road exceeding the speed limit on a daily basis, and we have 5,800 vehicles using that road every day, a figure that increases in peak summer. With Ormsby Road having 5,600 vehicles and an excess speed, breaking the speed limit a little lower at 17%. For 40 years, Caister Bypass has served the northern villages and kept traffic out of our village. Now that could all change. 3 deaths in the last 12 years. Let's not have any more. Environment. Although the revised plan reduces the length of the 40-year-old established hedgerows loss, this is an important wildlife corridor with hedgehogs already on the red list using this area and monitored by residents and reported to Caister Environmental Alliance. We also have 2 peregrine falcons that have been nesting on land very close to this area for the last, I think, 5 years. Environmentalists fear that these will be lost. There are also bats living in the trees and water tower very close to this development, just a matter of 20 metres away on the Caister side of the bypass. That area along that bypass is used as a wildlife corridor. Everyone is saying, save hedgerows and trees. Indeed, as a parish, we have had a tree planting campaign since 2017. Yet here we are with a plan to destroy the trees that have been established along our bypass for 40 years, along with the hedgerows. They form a great barrier, absorbing the carbon from the traffic along the bypass and thus protecting the health of our residents. To destroy this vital wildlife area is not a positive move for the environment. We believe that climate change is a big issue, and we feel this is important for everyone's future. The facilities, there is real concern about already within the two doctors' practices within the village that a service already under great strain will be overrun. Currently, they are having difficulty recruiting 3 doctors in one of the practices, and they've been trying for some time. Caister has an ageing population in need of these services already. With over 32% of residents over 65, this will only be compounded by a development as large as this. However, the bypass, if it is changed, it will still remain.
Councillor, you have 30 seconds. Thank you.
Will remain a barrier for the development. It will be an isolated community. The plan is not right for Caister, not right for the northern villages. There needs to be further consultation with the developers. They've not really listened to anything we have said. We would ask that you reject this development in its current form and look again with proper consultation with the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wood. Are there any councillors who would have any questions for the parish councillor? No? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Wood, for your time and input. At this point, I now call upon Ward Councillor, Councillor Penny Carpenter, please. Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. You have 5 minutes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Chairman and Committee. For transparency and to those attending this evening, to be crystal clear, I have not approached or spoken with any members leading up to this meeting here this evening regarding this proposed development. In July of 1978, Caister Bypass was opened with a pedestrian overpass for the residents of West Caister, whose population I think is under 200, to have direct, safe access to West Road in Caister. The connectivity for the village's residents is clear for all to see. At the beginning of this process, I asked that consideration should be given to pedestrian overpass. On page 52 of your papers, it explains their reason for not considering installation, and the final line being, there would be a large local visual and light impact and the cost. So, for at least 1,500 plus people living on a new neighbourhood development, no overpass. Yet a few hundred yards down the road, there is one for the residents of West Caister. We would all acknowledge traffic has drastically increased since 1978. The proposed layout of the highways is quite impressive. However, with all the crossings in the carriageways, I still feel, and it's been expressed here this evening, that pedestrians, would they actually stand out? Would they be visible to drivers, or would it be better all round to have an overpass? In your documents, and I will say page 41 and page 60, it does say that they have done a robust service to have a look at this, but the traffic through Caister has not been considered. Your hope is that the best case scenario, movements associated with the development will reduce too. And page 60, 9.46, transport assessment robustly demonstrates that it would not be quicker to nip through Caister. Theorising is all very well and good, But in real life, people do take shortcuts. We all take shortcuts. And I have grave concerns for the residents who live on and just off the Prince of Wales Road. This will likely become a rat run with noise and disruption. And locals do use other areas, particularly during the holiday season, and obviously on the bypass, that's one of those which we all know becomes fairly busy. So we will take other routes and we will use Ormsby Road. So any traffic calming measures is going to even style up everything else. So in effect, the northern bypass known locally as Jack Chase Way, which serves Ormsby, Scratby, Hemsby, Martham and Winterton and beyond, will become a 40-mile-an-hour road, just like thousands of roads up and down our country. On pages 11, 2.7a, the local centre, in particular healthcare facility, likely to take place after phase two, the Norfolk and Waveney Integrated Healthcare System has advised that the two current practices that serve Caister have no capacity to serve additional growth in existing premises. Then I point you out to page 47. First phase, 275 dwellings. Phase 2, 90 dwellings. Phase 3, 215 dwellings. Opening of a local centre and school. Caister has two practices operating out of small premises, both of which are landlocked, so they have no way of expanding either the buildings or services provided. With the age demographic of Caister, now with large retirement population, people are living longer, but we need the services to keep going, and I put myself in that category. But perhaps we call on the services more than ever. I therefore believe this development would have serious, almost detrimental long-term consequences for all residents, and I therefore ask that serious consideration is given, should this permission be given, for the release of land and allow primary care to have the opportunity to build a new multifunctional primary healthcare hub in tandem with phase 1, not phase 2 or phase 3, as this is not undertaken the existing patients already, and you have a potential of 1,280 people all trying to register within our existing system. That also includes dentistry. So once the site is built out, that would take us well over 10,500 residents for our health providers to manage. Phase 1.
Councillor Carpenter, you have 15 seconds.
The new bus service, page 22, funding agreed for up to 5 years. This development will take 7 to 10 years to build. So what happens to that bus service after 5 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Are there any councillors got any questions for the ward councillor? No? Okay. Thanks, Councillor Carpenter, for your time and input as well. Thank you. So we now move to over to the debate and the decision. It's over to the councillors to see what they decide. Councillor Myers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Carpenter's actually stole a little bit of my thunder, because I too share the concerns that there's going to be no infrastructure until phase 3. No school provision, no medical provision until that time. And up until phase 3, we don't know whether it's going to be at the beginning or the end of it, there's 275 plus 90, so what's that? That's 365, so if you double that, that's about 720 people. Even if only a third of them have children, that's about 120 plus people. Children got to get to school. So with regards to an overpass, I have to support that. Traffic lights on roundabouts defeat roundabouts. Roundabouts are supposed to keep traffic flow going. Put lights on them, people are just sat there waiting at lights and possibly empty egress onto it. So I would support an overpass to allow people to get to and from and reduce the risk of injury on the road and road crossings. And I would also support bringing the infrastructure forward into phase 1. Now, I know it's a financial issue for Persimmon with regards to that, because they would like to get their money in on the houses and they're selling, and there is provision with the 106 money, and of course the education is also down to the county council. But there is some £4 million being provided by the 106 money towards the infrastructure, and I would like to see the infrastructure brought forward to phase 1 and not phase 3, and an overpass for the safety of people crossing that bypass, and to reduce slowing down the traffic when they've got to stop at crossings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Councillor Tony Wright.
Thanks very much, Chair. And certainly I'm going to repeat things that I've said probably on many other occasions in the first instance, and this is one regarding the use of agricultural land. And I'm on record as being opposed to many of the developments in the past because of the use of grade 1 and grade 2 agricultural land, and I'm going to do exactly the same here because I do have serious concerns over the use of the land that we have, especially in these times when we're hearing that there is a food shortage. There are going to be particular problems, and this is an arable land which would be really important to the area. And we might say, well, it's only a few hectares, but at the end of the day, if you add them all together over what we've actually given plan permission for over the years, it's a considerable sum. And as I've said before, grade 1 agricultural land is very valuable. I know there's only a small amount within this particular development, but I have to say we're the only area in Norfolk with grade 1 agricultural land. Where the others have gone, I don't know. So on that particular point, I do have serious concerns over the use, once again, of agricultural land, despite the fact that I do understand the need that we have to have housing requirements, and certainly in terms of this particular development, it may well be very important for here. But I too also have concerns over the question of the phased development of this. I'd written my notes down here before this in terms of the actual plan to build 80 properties per year, with the first phase coming in for 275 dwellings. And then obviously shall be commenced until mechanism for school provision has been secured. Now, that means that after 3 years, we could still be in a position where we don't know where the school is going to be, when it's going to be funded, or how it's going to be funded, and indeed how we're going to actually get the teachers to actually be within the school itself. Then it goes on to say after this that no occupation of phase 3 dwellings, so it means those phase 3 dwellings can actually be built. So we could have a situation where we've got probably the vast majority of the properties being built without any services being promised on that particular site. So I do have major concerns over this. And in terms of the roads themselves, it is a major road that goes through and splits Caister into. And again, I've raised these concerns before in terms of what we should be looking at in terms of community. And we're building a separate community here. Now, I do understand the need for this, and what I hear from the objectors is not so much being opposed to the development per se, but certainly some of the issues that have been raised in terms of access to the site and egress from the site, as well as some of the other issues to do with hedgerows and the environmental considerations. And certainly I think this is something that should be taken back. And I do agree with Councillor Myers when he talks about the dwellings and the phases themselves, because I think at the end of the day, they could build 275 dwellings and there would be no other services provided on there under this particular scheme itself. And then we could go even further than that, another 305 dwellings before they can actually build the other service provisions within that site. So I have a great deal of concern for this, and it's an opinion that I've held, as I said before. It's nothing new with regard to this, but it does surprise me that on the opposite side, that it's their local plan, yet there seems to be a degree of opposition to the local plan on this particular one. Sometimes I think it's crocodile tears, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I'd just like to make a point that you do actually sit on the local plan, and this site is adopted in the new local plan which you voted for.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just so you understand that that is adopted. That is an adopted site, and that is the site.
I do understand that. I know exactly how I voted, Mr. Chairman, and can I just say I'm also on record as saying exactly the same thing about the use of agricultural land, and I'm sure that you'll agree that I have used that on a number of occasions, given my concerns over that. Overall, a local plan is a plan that develops, but it doesn't come to fruition until you're actually deciding on particular issues, such as this plan.
The plan is adopted, and you sit on the local plan.
I do, and do you agree that I've raised those same issues before or not?
Well, we haven't
have I agreed,
policy.
Mr. Chairman? You're questioning me in terms of that. I accept I'm on the local plan, and
yes,
it is our local plan.
That is the adopted plan.
And have I raised the same issues
you
before?
have during that period, but it's now adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Hammond.
Thank you, Chair. Senior moment. On this committee, I'm probably the one person who's most committed to development. I'm for more than I'm against it. And I'm looking at this scheme and I've got serious concerns. I mean, most of the accidents on Jack Chase Way are at junctions. And people approaching at closing speeds and they just rear into people. There's been no fatalities on that road in my living knowledge. And I've spoke to other people about that and no one can remember anyone ever dying there. But with 187 children crossing that road when this site's up and running, senior citizens crossing the road as well, you're dead just as much at 40 miles an hour as 60 if a car hits you. Putting more junctions in is going to put more accidents on that road. To lose a bypass for housing is absolutely crazy. I mean, I've been trying to get someone to come up with a different way of accessing this site so I can put my hand up and say I wholeheartedly support it. But to access this sort of Jack Chase Way in these ways, I find absolutely crazy and ridiculous. And there is no way I could possibly support this. I'm sorry, but it's just not acceptable.
Councillor Donna Hammond.
Thank you, Chair. I do think the site looks very nice and it would be part of the community if it was built, but I totally do not like the whole access point at all. I'm very concerned about accidents on there. And I've also got to take into consideration not just the residents of Caister and the people using the bypass to get to the northern villages and the holiday makers who'd be using it. There's also the residents that will be living there, and it will sell quickly. Caister's very, very popular. Those residents are going to be part of the frustrated scheme we're going to create. This is really, really important. We must really be careful what we do here, because in 10 years' time, we don't want to look back and say, yeah, we didn't make a very good job of that. That road is a disaster. Thank you.
Councillor Henton.
Thank you, Chairman. In 1970, I joined Norfolk Constabulary, and at that time I was posted to Norwich as an officer. In 1973, I was wheedled my way back and was posted back to the Caister section, stationed at Caister, and I was a Yarmouth lad. I can remember from 1973 onwards, when I was in Caister, of having to do traffic control at Tan Lane. This was pre the bypass, and we used to stand there for hours to make sure people could turn down the junctions, get past safely, and it was very onerous. So you can understand that in 1978, when the bypass was built, and that was a godsend. I've heard what the officers have said, and I've heard what our learned friend from the Highways Authority has said, but notwithstanding the traffic assessment which has been submitted, I do have great concerns that this development will be detrimental in respect of traffic congestion, road safety, and rat running through the Caister, and I shall not be supporting it.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, it's been a very interesting debate, but I haven't heard anything about the houses, the need for houses in this borough, for the youngsters of this borough, and for people moving into work. We need houses. We need houses, and this particular site, as the Chairman has said, is in our adopted local plan. I think it's been in there for probably 5 years, 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. We desperately need houses in this borough. We're being forced by the government to build houses, as are all authorities throughout the United Kingdom. We desperately need houses, and we desperately need houses for our youngsters in the northern parishes, because basically not a lot of development goes on in those northern parishes. I've got every sympathy with the residents who talk about Jack Chase Way and the junctions, but let me tell you something. In Bradwell, we've got a massive persimmon development. As the Chairman knows, he represents that, Bradwell South and Hopton. Hundreds and hundreds of children are crossing the A143 on a daily basis. And it doesn't slow the traffic is slow anyway.
It just slows traffic down. But we need houses. We need houses. And, you know, the phasing is great. Of course, we'd all love to see this phasing come in at the first stage. Unfortunately, the funders or the people that are moving in want to see the houses occupied. They want to see the people there before they put their money into a health centre, a leisure centre, whatever. We'd all love to see that, but it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. It doesn't work like that. And, you know, you're going to get 25 acres of open space, which is a phenomenal amount, a health centre, a care home, health centre stroke care home.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me. Excuse me.
A local
Can you let the
centre.
councillor speak? We'll do it fair. Thank you. Excuse me. Excuse me,
Mr. Chairman. If that gentleman who just said that councillors receive brown envelopes is prepared to stand up. No,
right,
that gentleman
thank
next to you
you.
at the back. He said that.
I said that.
All right, so you said that. If you can prove that one of these councillors round this chamber tonight has received a brown envelope to making a decision, put their name up, and they will then take you to court. Give a name.
Thank you.
Give
Excuse me, sir. Thank you.
No.
Sir, excuse me. Excuse me. Can you be quiet, please? If you don't keep quiet, I will get you out of this room. Okay, sir? No, I'll give you all a choice. I do it fairly and I give everyone their fair say. I pride myself on doing things properly. If you continue to shout out, I will have you sent out of this council chamber. Okay? Please be quiet, listen to the debate, and we'll do it properly how we should be. Thank you. Okay? If you shout out again, sir, you're going to have to leave the room. Okay? Okay? Thank you. Councillor Wainwright.
All I'm saying is we need houses in the borough. Both Bradwell and Caister have been designated primary areas for development. Exactly the same, Caister and Bradwell. Bradwell has taken their fair share over the years. We have got hundreds of new houses. Caister, as I say, are earmarked to take some of those developments. I understand the concerns about Jack Chase Way. I'd love to see an overpass or an underpass. Now, if Norfolk County Council can come up with something like that with the developers, great. I'd love to see that, as you all would.
Excuse me, we don't have shouting out in the public gallery. Okay, thank you. If you do it again, you'll have to leave. Thank you.
I mean, residents have brought up about an overpass or an underpass. Now, I don't know the best position for either of those, but I'm sure the Norfolk County Council officers do, and I'm sure residents could have some input into that. I'd like to see that. You said consultation hasn't taken place, adequate consultation. That may be the case. I know we do consultation, you know, with all developments, and everybody's got the opportunity to put their four pennyworth in. But all I'm saying is that we need houses in the borough. We need to look after our youngsters. We want our youngsters to stay in the borough. We want them to be able to buy and live and work in the borough. That's what we want. That's what I want for well, not my children, they're my grandchildren. That's what I want. And if we keep turning down these big developments, none of that will happen. They will move out, basically, because they can't afford to move into the northern parishes because most of the properties are too expensive. This is an opportunity for Simon will build to the standards that they've said. As I say, it's, you know.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to debate and I've listened to comments from my fellow councillors. For the record, I also sit on the local plan, and I also have got copies of both the core strategy and the local plan as it stands. And those houses, and I don't think I've actually heard anybody criticising particularly the fact that we do need houses. The population's growing, and it is a nice place to live. And we've got to provide houses, we've got to provide affordable houses, and we've got to provide facilities. But we have got this logjam, which to me is all centred around the access to this site. And I always laugh, and I know that our planning manager tells me off because I come up with new policies. And we need a policy like CS 1001, which is common sense. And I often wonder in planning, where has the common sense gone? You know, I accept policy. I think policy is good because it gives us a framework. Where is the common sense? There has been numerous people making comments about the safety on this site. getting to backwards and forwards. And it's quite interesting because I was very involved at the Pointers East development, because that's in Scrappy Ward. There was panic because there wouldn't be anywhere for the kids to go to school because that was Ormsby. Do you know what? There's hardly any kids go to school in Ormsby because all those houses have been bought by people who've come up here on holiday, seen a really nice house in Caister for 210,000, and they've gone back to London and sold a place for $500,000 and come back, and they've retired here. Good luck to them. But also that brings another thing. That brings the pressure on the health services, because you can see I'm not that young. As you get older, you need more health services. I've heard comments and looked at the plans, and some of the comments are on the care home, on the housing, sorry, on the shops, the school. It's could be, might be, possibly. Now, if people are going to be moving onto a site, they need those facilities very early on. They don't want to be sitting there 2 or 3 years. People are going to look and expect those things. So what I'm going to say, Chairman, is, and I don't know how this can be arranged, but surely there must be room for a compromise. We've established the fact that in the original plans that came out in 2018, there was a nice overpass so that connected the two sites. Now, we've been told that apparently it wouldn't look very nice. But surely, we're the people who live here. We're the people who live here. No disrespect to the planners, but most of them don't live in the area. So please, can we have some common sense? I don't know how it can be sorted out, but I am very concerned that, you know, what could be a very good development, deliver good housing for the borough, could cause a huge amount of problems. And bear in mind, you know, if this didn't go ahead, then we would be at the mercy of not having the land supply. And we all know what that was like 3 years ago, when anybody could put an application in and they could build wherever they wanted, because we did not have a land supply. So I do urge my colleagues to think very carefully about what we decide. And I would love to see somebody in the officers to actually say, well, how can we get a compromise on this with Persimmon so that in the end everybody wins? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Camden.
Thank you, Chairman. I think first, if I stay, I do understand the sensitivities that a large development like this can pose for residents, particularly those that live close by. But I have to say I concur with a lot of other comments that have been said. We need housing in this borough, and particularly for the younger age groups. In fact, I heard respectfully the parish councillor say Caister has an ageing population. And it's right that we bring further people into that community, and we get the benefits that Caister might bring from that housing development, such as the extra S106 money, which could be put into further infrastructure projects and the like, which will help residents of Caister. It will also boost their local economy there by having further people using amenities and that in Caister. But I do totally understand the objections put through. However, it is in the local plan to build this. It has been voted through to allocate this area for housing, and I think that we have an obligation to see that through, subject to the conditions. We have an obligation to see that through and provide decent, affordable housing for those in our borough. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Chair. First thing, yes, we do need housing, but we have planning permission passed for over 1,000 new homes that have not even been started. Ground hasn't been broke on. Sites haven't even been bought. They're just sitting there idle. So, yes, we need them, but there's no saying they're going to get built. We could pass this and Persimmon could just sit on it for years and not do anything.
That's what they do, isn't it?
Yes, they say they're going to start it, but that doesn't mean they say will. We're already talking about over 3 to 6 months to get 106 agreed. And with MP law, it could take even longer. We know things take time, so there's no saying it's going to be done quick. East Anglian Way, we refused on highways ground, and it was upheld on appeal because we refused on highways ground, even though it was deliverable in our core strategy, and we wanted it, and we want housing. So just because we want it doesn't mean to say we've got to compromise on health and safety of our residents and children. That's more important. This site was refused in 2001, and I guess it was for access grounds. I don't know. It wasn't in the report. It would have been nice to know the reason it was refused before. But you do know.
It was premature to the development plan at the time, so it wasn't a needed site at that time. We're now.
So it wasn't developable. I mean, our core strategy, which we've adopted, and local planning, it's down as being deliverable, but it is in West Caister. It isn't in Caister, it's in West Caister, it's the other side of the bypass. That's not open for debate, it's a fact. And if it went to appeal, the inspector would have to say is it in Caister or West Caister? It's West Caister. West Caister is clearly stated as a tertiary village. And tertiary villages and secondary villages only have to provide 5%, not 665. We don't need that many in that side of the road. A smaller number would reduce the traffic impact and reduce it considerably. We're going round in circles and we're not getting anywhere. The access is terrible. I don't think anyone can tell me where a bypass has been taken out to put housing in. Because that's what we're doing. We're taking a bypass away to make it a road to put housing in. I mean, Mark, can you tell me, has there ever been a bypass taken away?
Hang on, through the chair.
Okay. Right, Chairman.
Right.
Good Mark answer. Has one been taken away to make it?
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. Certainly there have been planning applications in the past where you've had roads that have been reduced in terms of speed by way of TROs, and obviously we don't deal with TROs, that's a county matter. But a requirement of the permission has been the securing of a TRO to reduce the speed limit. So yes, certainly it has happened.
It just buggers belief that we're going to do it. I mean, another access point. I mean, there is enough land in the applicant's ownership to look at maybe another way of getting
Councillor
into that
Hammond,
site.
we are
But
considering the application in front of us today, not what you
that.
would like or anyone else would like.
Okay, I'll leave it then.
Okay, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with Councillor Canton. This is part of our local plan and has been established for a long period of time. We have to acknowledge that local plan demonstrated our need for housing within the Great Yarmouth area, and especially in the northern villages, and especially for young people. So it's there. It's going to be developed at some stage. Our intention tonight, as I agree with Councillor Freeman, is to get the best deal possible on this site and the best solution for people. Can I just say, though, talking about the Jack Chase bypass, and I lived in the northern villages for some time, and I can remember the Bobby being on the beat near West Road where it meets there, and probably you, Ron, at the time. Yeah, and it was awful getting through, and the Jack Chase bypass certainly made a difference. But there's a similar comparison within our borough between the A47 near the James Paget, near going down to Lowestoft, and the link route which goes across to the A143, which goes to Beccles. Now that road takes all the traffic as well now, which comes from the A14 through Beccles and through to the port entrance down the bypass. That road, which is limited to 40, has 3 roundabouts on it, giving access to housing estates. There are no issues on that road. It's slow in the mornings, while I'm walking along this, fairly slow. Yes, it goes down to 40, and at nights there's no one on it at all. It's empty, completely empty. So we've got comparisons, and I don't think there'll be the big thing coming back on that. I do agree, there are issues around getting across that road to the other estates and getting across the road to the centre of Caister. So that is an issue, and perhaps the overpass would have been an adequate solution to that. 2 other points I think we ought to raise, I just mentioned, which have been not material really, but people keep raising them. They raise the funding of the NHS, doctors, GPs, nurses, etc., and the funding of schools. The way the funding works for the NHS, I was involved with the NHS for a period of time, is that you have to have the houses and people there first, before you get the funding. So you have to have the people living in Caister, living on the estate, before the NHS will allocate monies to build a new medical centre. Yes, Caister needs one. The access to the one on West Road, the access to the one near the holiday camps is awful. I know that, I've been around them myself. There's a need for one. But the way to get one, you need people living there. Then the money is accessed. And it goes per head of population. So the more people you have living there, the more money you get allocated to get a medical centre. The same applies to schools. And again, I can refer you back to the chairman's ward, where he's got a school about to be built in his ward on the new estate, which is a similar building. The land was allocated, goodness knows, must be 7-8 years ago. Now the school is now going out, and I think it's going out to find an academy trust to run it, because Norfolk will do that. It won't be a Norfolk school, but an academy running it. And again, the money doesn't come to the schools until you've got all the pupils actually in the area. So those two concerns are not material, I think, to this planning application. They can't be used as an excuse to turn the application down, because that money will come eventually over a period of time. And we do, you know, as Councillor Wainwright rightly said, we do need houses, affordable houses in the northern villages. It's one of the things which we're very short of. We're short of them in the southern villages as well. So I would ask people to support this plan, and perhaps we should be looking for a compromise to see if Persimmons would consider putting in a footbridge or something of that nature towards the southern end of the Jack Case Way. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Williamson for clearing up the issue with regards to building the infrastructure in so much as you're quite right, in that the infrastructure is not simply just down to Persimmon, it's down to Norfolk County Council, and it's down to the health service as well. And they will not put in unless they see the demand, and we all know that at the moment demand is exceeding provision, but that is also a matter for the NHS and central government. As you said, it's not a material consideration. I have been, and the good thing about these debates are, I've been sort of going from one side to the other, and heard an awful lot. And yes, we absolutely do need houses, and they've got to be built somewhere, and it is within the local plan. So as a material consideration, turn it down, we'll probably lose on an appeal anyway. So what can we do? Councillor Freeman, we need to come to a compromise. We need the houses, but we also need the safety aspect. For me, it's now boiled down to, with regards to the safety of people crossing over to get into Caister. If we, and I know that a lot of the decisions today is on reserved matters within the planning application itself, and I'm just wondering if we can provide some, if I can be alleviated of my concerns about the safety of crossing that road, which does not interfere with the traffic flow, does not reduce it down, and does not compromise the safety of pedestrians, then I would be minded to look to positive for this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Could the highways guy just come in regarding the phasing and the highways agreements and that? If anything could be done on those concerns.
I think, David, in fairness, the County Council have looked at the proposed phasing structure put forward by the applicant. I would say to all members of the committee that condition 2 is put in the report to help us determine when the phasing will be agreed. So it's not necessarily going to be 275 dwellings before certain infrastructure is provided. But the county highways officers have looked at the safety implications and found that the trigger points necessary are the maximum amount necessary before the infrastructure makes this needs to be provided to make it acceptable and avoid an unacceptable impact. So that's the thinking, David. If you could clarify that, please, about those trigger points and phases.
Yes, I think that's fair to say that we looked. The Highway Authority looked quite carefully at how the development might come forward and when the mitigation measures might be appropriate. For example, the much talked about scheme at Ormsby Road has been requested prior to commencement of works at Jack Chase Way bypass to try and protect the existing community. It's also quite correct that the latter phases of the highway works, I think the Highway Authority requested they were conditioned prior to occupation of the 276th dwelling, and that is prior. So, yeah, it could be brought. Those works could be brought forward at an earlier stage, obviously subject to agreement with yourselves.
Thank you. Councillor Wainwright.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I completely agree with Councillor Myers and Councillor Freeman. Obviously, I don't think there's any dissent from we need the houses, but road needs to be made safer or safe. So basically, I would support Councillor Freeman and Councillor Myers' suggestion that we do look at an overpass, basically, to alleviate these concerns. Because if we could do that, I don't know whether residents would agree with that or not, but we would then get the houses and we would try and satisfy the safety measures that councillors would appear sitting around the chamber tonight would agree with. I know that Norfolk County Council have done their assessment and they put the roundabouts in and the crossings, but, you know, there is the possibility, I'm sure, that we could try and change that or put in another condition about an overpass. I don't know. I mean, you know, perhaps Norfolk County Council, but, you know, sometimes when I've found in the past that Norfolk County Council say, well, yeah, that's not a problem, that'll all work. And then quite clearly it doesn't. You know, and all members sitting around this chamber have found at times, you know, we think sometimes Norfolk County Council's decisions are insane. And we look at, you know, but sometimes I think they just look at a spreadsheet and look at a map and think, oh, yeah, that'd be all right. But sometimes it doesn't. So if we could come to some sort of compromise, we could see that the development going ahead with the safety measures in place would protect the children and protect the residents when they're crossing that busy road. So,
Yeah, thank you. Robert, you come in
Yeah.
there?
I just want to clarify the process that the highways assessment will have gone through. Whilst the transport assessment would have looked at the volumes of traffic created and the routes that those volumes would take and everything like that and the mitigation necessary, but it would have also included a road safety assessment. So it would have found that the proposals put forward in terms of the 6 crossing points at grade, the size and the scale of the roundabout that's proposed and the nature of the Toucan crossings around the Prince of Wales Road junction, and it has found those to be safe, and it has looked at those technical drawings that have been put forward so that we know that those measures are going to be as safe as you are going to get them. Just a note of caution about the idea of trying to require a form of underpass or an overpass. Well, they're not going to be cheap things to do, and we don't even know if it's within the applicant's control to provide them, because it obviously requires land on both sides to do all those kind of things, and it is a significant financial undertaking to do that. And there are 2 issues with that. The first one being that it has been found from a number of studies and good practice that putting those barriers, and we're going to call them barriers to people's movement, is not a sustainable way to go to encourage people to access the rest of Caister by foot and by bicycle, because people just won't do it. They'll see an overpass and they'll see the steps and they'll think, oh, I don't fancy that, I'll jump in the car. Or they'll look at an underpass and they go, oh, it's a bit cold and it's a bit threatening. That fear of potentially, we'll use the word fear of crime, it deters people from using underpasses. That is what urban designers have found and traffic engineers have found. So that's not a good solution for encouraging walking and cycling, which the policy has said must be done. That is your objective on your adopted local development plan. The second part of that is that those things do come at significant cost. Oh, sorry, I'll go back to the first part, being putting a barrier to movement. The consequence of that is that people will jump in their cars to do unnecessary trips. It's not a massive distance into Caister. People would walk that. There will also be the bus service that Gordon's described, funded by the developer for 5 years, and after which point it should be self-sufficient and self-sustaining. There is every opportunity for people to see this as a sustainable urban extension to the village, the key service centre of Caister. Make use of those facilities, have that interaction between the 2 communities for the economic growth and the community cohesion that your policy is looking for. The putting barriers up to people doing that through cycling and walking will be more traffic in Caister, because that is just the easy thing to do, which we don't want to necessarily encourage. The second part is the cost. And if you're trying to encourage a scheme to include these alternative transport strategies, you're going to either increase the cost to the developer or prolong the development such a lot. But the cost is only going to be met by one way. It's going to be a compromise to the other infrastructure that the applicant has suggested that they'll provide. And 20% is the viable maximum that we can expect in terms of affordable housing. If we're putting in extra costs for infrastructure, we're going to in most likelihood see a compromised viability and less affordable housing. 130 odd affordable houses is not to be sniffed at in this part of the world. It makes sure at the moment the applicant has said that they can provide 20% affordable housing. If we start to encumber them with more costs, it's quite likely that we'll see an impact on our affordable housing provision. That's just worth bearing in mind. I think that's probably everything, Chair, for the moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. You've heard the planning officers, explanations regarding the site. I fully understand that's very contentious, but then again, I fully understand that we do need houses. And a lot of these councillors in this room this evening have been on the local plan or are on the local plan. And, the local plan, part 2 is adopted. It's been through P&R. It's been voted on in this council and passed, and everything is agreed. It is the policy. Now, if the councillors sat on this committee this evening are thinking of doing and turning it down, they really need to understand the valid reasons why they would turn this application down. Because you would be putting this council in a very vulnerable position, because it is adopted plan. We have agreed that plan. So if any other councillors wish to debate, no? Have we got anyone? Councillor Hammond?
The question about the vote. We will vote, and if we vote for the development to go ahead, does that mean there's no talk and then about changing the Jack Chase Way issues? Is that just basically we've agreed to what we've been proposed to today? Thank you.
Yeah, the application before you today, committee, is for the outline in principle development of everything else and the fully detailed access arrangements into the site and the off-site works. So what is before you is what you see in terms of the highways impact. We can't put a condition on that says do extra works that you haven't put forward at the moment. So, yep. Sorry. Okay.
The other thing that no one has mentioned today is back to accidents on that road. Everybody living in the new site, working in the new site, travelling to the site or visiting it, will be stuck in the new site while the road is closed, while the accident is sorted out. There is no other exit, and I just find that very strange.
Councillor, that's not really an issue for the planning committee.
Really?
If there's an accident.
I'm sorry, Chair, that's really, really relevant. I mean,
well, yeah, you could say that about the estate where I live. If there's an accident,
there's only one entrance. And
there
exit.
is on King's Drive and Bradwell as well.
That's crazy as well. Then.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is there any more debate? You've heard what I've got to say. Have we got a proposer to move a recommendation? Councillor Candon.
I propose we support this recommendation.
Have we got a second? Sorry. Councillor Williamson.
I second the recommendation.
Okay, so we've got a proposer and a seconder to approve the application. So we'll go to the vote. All those in favour to approve, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 8 for.
All those against.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's carried.
That's carried.
And passed. Thank you. I move to item number 5, which is any other business. I'm not aware of any other business from any officers at all. I would just like to say thank you for the. Thank you. I'd just like to thank everybody who attended, and also the people who were watching also online. And I declare the meeting closed at 8:15. Thank you.